वीरान्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. In the continuation of reading chapter 20 from the book The Teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by Srila Prabhupada. But from the Vedic literature we understand that the Absolute Truth has various multi-forms of energy, and therefore the living entities and the cosmic manifestation are only a demonstration of his various energies. As energies are non-separable from the energetic, therefore this transformation of the living entity and the cosmic manifestation is an inseparable truth, which is part of the same absolute truth. Such a conclusion about the absolute truth and the relative truth should not be unacceptable to any sane man. The Supreme Absolute Truth has his inconceivable potency, and out of that potential energy, this cosmic manifestation has been effected. In other words, the Supreme Absolute Truth is the ingredient, and the living entity and the cosmic manifestation are byproducts. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it is clearly stated, Yato va imani bhutani jayante. This clearly states that the Absolute Truth is the original reservoir of all ingredients, and this material world of the living entities is produced out of those ingredients. Less intelligent persons who cannot understand the doctrine of byproducts cannot grasp how this cosmic manifestation and the living entity are simultaneously one and different from the absolute truth. Without understanding this truth, if out of unnecessary fear one concludes that this cosmic manifestation and the living entity are false by putting forward the example of mistaking a rope for a snake, as some Shankaracharya does, or mistaking the oyster shell for gold. Surely that sort of argument is simply cheating. The examples of mistaking a rope for a snake and the oyster shell for gold mentioned in the Manduka Upanishad have their different applications and can be understood as follows. The living entity in his original constitution is pure spirit, and when a human being identifies himself with this material body, that is a case of accepting the rope as a snake or the oyster shell as gold. The doctrine of transformation of state is accepted when one thing is mistaken for another. Actually, the body is not the living entity, and to accept the body as the living entity is the doctrine of transformation of state. Every conditioned soul is undoubtedly contaminated by this doctrine of trait formation of state. This conditional state of the living entity is a diseased condition. Originally, the living entity and the original cause of this cosmic manifestation are certainly not in this state of transformation, but mistaken thoughts and arguments can overcome a person when he forgets about the inconceivable energies and activities of the Supreme Lord. Even in the material world, there are many examples. The sun is producing unlimited energies from time immemorial, and so many byproducts result from the sun. Yet, there is no change in the heat and temperature of the sun itself. The sun can maintain itself in its original state of temperature, although it is a material product. In spite of producing so many byproducts, then is it very difficult to understand that the supreme absolute truth, in spite of his producing so many byproducts by his conceivable energy, is not changed at all. Therefore, there is no question of the transformation of his state. It is learned from the Vedic literature that there is a material product which is called touchstone, which simply by touch can transform iron into gold. The touchstone can produce an unlimited quantity of gold and still the touchstone itself does not change its states. Therefore, to suppose that this cosmic manifestation and the living entities are false or illusory, as advocated by the Mayavadi philosopher, is ignorance. No sane man should impose ignorance and illusion upon the supreme absolute truth, who is absolute in everything. There is no possibility of change or ignorance or illusion with him. Supreme Brahman is transcendental and completely different from any sort of material conception. Therefore, In the Supreme Absolute Truth, there is every possibility of inconceivable potential energy. In the Shvetara Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead is full of inconceivable energies and that one has previous experience of the snake. Otherwise, how can one mistaken the rope as a snake? Therefore, the conception of the snake is not untrue or unreal. It is a question of application. When by mistake we impose our conviction on the rope as being a snake, that is ignorance. But the very idea of the snake is not itself ignorance. Similarly, when we accept a mirage of water in the desert, there is no question of water being a false concept. Water is a fact, but the application of water in the desert is a mistake. Therefore, this cosmic manifestation is not false, as it is stated by Shankara. There is nothing false here. To consider this material manifestation as false is another ignorance. The Mayavadi's theory that this world is false is ignorance. The conclusion of Vaishnava philosophy is that this cosmic manifestation is a byproduct and of the inconvincible energy of the Supreme Lord. The principal word in the Vedas, the principal word in the Vedas, Pranava Omkara, is the sound representation of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Omkara should be taken as the sound supreme. Shankara has falsely preached Tattvamasi as the supreme vibration in the Vedas instead of Omkara. Omkara is the reservoir of all the energies of the Supreme Lord. The ascent of the word Tattvamasi by Sankara as the supreme vibration of the Vedas is wrong because this word Tattvamasi is a secondary word only. This word suggests only a partial representation of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has in many places given importance to Omkara. The importance of Omkara is mentioned in the 8th chapter, 13th verse, 9th chapter, 17th verse, and 17th chapter, 23rd verse. Similarly, the importance of Omkara is stated in the Atharva Veda. Similarly, we get the importance of Omkara vibration in the Mandukya Upanishad. Srila Jiva Goswami has given great importance to the word Omkara in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. He says Omkara is the most confidential sound representation of the Supreme Lord. The sound representation or name of the Supreme Lord is as good as the Supreme Lord. By the vibration of such sound as Omkara or of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, one can be delivered from the contamination of this material world. And because such vibration of transcendental sound can deliver a conditioned soul, it is known as Taraka or deliverer. The sound vibration of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord. In the Narada Pancharatra also it is stated that when sound vibration is practiced by conditioned soul, the Supreme Lord is present on the tongue of such a vibrating person. In the Mandukya Upanishad, the same importance is given in that whatever is seen as spiritual with the addition of Omkara is perfect spiritual vision. In the spiritual world or in the spiritual vision, there is nothing except Omkara or the one alternate, Om. Unfortunately, Shankara has given up this chief word Omkara and he has whimsically accepted Tattvam Asi as the supreme vibration of the Vedas. By accepting such a secondary word of the Vedas as Tattvam Asi, leaving aside the principal word Omkara, he has given up direct interpretation in favor of his own indirect interpretation of the scripture. So we stop here for today's reading and summarize. Srila Prabhupada has very nicely explained about the defeating the Mayavadi philosophy, where the Mayavadi philosophies believe in the Mahavakya Tattvamasi, which is one of the 5 Mahavakyas. And also, Srila Prabhupada is explaining the philosophy of Mayavadi, where they believe that the absolute truth is the is the transformation of state. By explaining clearly here that where the Mayavadi philosophies assume that this world is false, or they believe in that world and the living entities are false and it is an illusion, everything is the supreme absolute truth. So this is nothing like the supreme absolute truth is considered to be the transformation of a state. But Srila Prabhupada explains that it is not the transformation of state, but it is a byproduct of the absolute supreme truth. This world and the living entities, both are the byproducts. The supreme absolute truth has an inconceivable energy, and this inconceivable energy itself produces a byproduct, but it itself does not undergo any state of formation or transformation. If we are not able to understand this byproduct concept, then it is very hard to overcome the belief of this Mayavadi philosophy, who thinks the absolute truth itself is transforming into another state, and 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 in the illusion accepting the absolute truth as these living entities and the universe, cosmic manifestation. The conditional state of this living entity is diseased, and this is called as the illusion, actually, as per Srila Prabhupada. There is the thinking that, or assuming this world as a snake, as a rope instead of a snake, that is illusion. But this original cause of this illusion is because of the forgetfulness of the living entity, the relationship between the absolute truth and the living entity. There is nothing like this material world is not existing, wherever the Maya philosophy says it is all false. The word knowing that cosmic manifestation is there itself is truth. It is not illusion. Just like the snake, when you are able to compare or know that you are under illusion, it is not a rope, it is a snake, or it is a snake, not a rope, vice versa, whatever that means. One is aware that snake is there. Similarly, world is existing, it is not false. So, and another nice thing what he explained with an example of touchstone, where the touchstone can transform any other stones when it comes in contact to cold, but it itself does not convert into cold. So the transformation of state philosophy is proved here very clearly